I went across the border. I live from California to Tijuana. There I met Margarita. Ay, 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 ay. Aleo. Lulole. Lulole. Some beauty, she yellow to she bouncy. Lips are sweet as honey, and she skin so smooth and silky. Ay, mamma mia, caramba, Margarita. 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 Stay with me forever. I will leave you never. True love going to conquer the language barrier. I Chihuahua Mamacita Margarita. 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 I love Mexico, but I have to go. Too bad I know to say adios, mi amo. I went across the border. I live in California to Tijuana. There I met Margarita. Ay, ay, ay. Hello, hello. A true Mexican beauty. She like long to she bouncy. Lips are sweet as honey, and her skin so smooth and silky. Ay, mamma mia, caramba, Margarita. 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 Stay with me forever. I will leave you never. True love going to conquer the language barrier. I Chihuahua Mamacita Margarita. 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 I love Mexico, but I have to go. Too bad I know to say adios, mi amor. Mi amor. Yo soy hombre honesto. Enamorado. Hey, hey, yeah, yeah. A bounce up Margarita one night in a fiesta. The señorita fell in love with the soca. Ay, 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 ay. Hello. We went to a cantina, drink up the tequila, eat up them tortilla, the girl end up in the casa. Ay, mamma mia, caramba, Margarita. 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 Tijuana Broja, fatter than Conchita, fiery than Rosa, sweeter than Maria. I'm your Mamacita Margarita. 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 I love Mexico, but I have to go. Too bad I know to say adios, mi amor. La 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 la. You are the genesis of my happiness. You're the one that I have always dreamed of. But everything I need, everything I want, how can I exist without your sweet love? When I see you in your sorry or you for me, I am captured by your innovative beauty. If it wasn't for your nanny and Koji, I will marry you and take you in his Marachi. My sweet love. Sexy Marachi, sexy Marachi. Sexy marachil, alright. Do la hand, oh, do la hand. Hear this sweet music playing. I want to hold you, I want to rock you, I want to jump you, jump you, jump you, jump you. La 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 la. Oh baby. La, 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 la. I will tell you true, the way I feel for you. I'll do anything to make you happy. So if you think it's best to change my style of dress, I will wear a capra or a joji. I'll build you a mother chupa down in penal. I'll give you all your sweet love and forever. To me, may something soon that it did I need. Anyone can see you are the queen of beauty. Marachil, marachil. Oh, my sweet Judah. Sexy marachil, sexy marachil, sexy marachil, alright. Judah, Judah. I want to hold you, I want to rock you, I want to jam you, jam you, jam you, jam you. Shooby doody doody dee. Back, back, do back, do back, back, do back, do back, back, do back. The fat was crowded and she was tight. While I was crowded, she high in flight. Hoitonian steel band, vision a jump. The girl can she bam bam. She down, don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't back, back for me. Don't back, back. Don't back, back for me. Don't back, back. Dancing with your man if you want it. Tell me down the pan with the vampire. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't back, back for me. Don't back, back. Don't back, back for me. Don't back, back. You look so pretty, really sexy. Boom boom look so healthy, jamming on the go but come here. If she was serious, I wouldn't complain. But in mischievous, this is she pray deliberately, blowing my mind. You know that I want she. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't back for me. Don't back. Don't back for me. Don't back. Dancing with your man, you want it, jumping on it. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't back for me. Don't back. Don't back for me. Don't back. You look so pretty, really sexy. You look so healthy, jamming on the groove. Don't do that. Mama, almost there. It's out. Oh, yo, yo. The place was jam with no more space. So on she bam bam, I had to press. But when she enter, the band she fall. A jam she center. Don't do that. 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 That's it with you, man. If you want to jump in on the family, the way, sir. Not bad for a man. Huh? Did I hear it? Did you hear it? Which old man? You see a old man? That's it. Papananga. Hangarada. The thing is, you Are you ready? When you drink your liquor and you drink it slow, and you reach for the doorknob, missing the whole damn dough. You ain't drunk? You have been drinking. Say yeah! Yeah! All right. When you drink that wine and you drink it red, and you reach for the pillow, missing the whole damn bed. You ain't drunk? You have been drinking. Say yeah! Yeah!
The Mighty Sparrow, Singer Francisco. It's Friday night, and it's Friday night, and some lighter music. You know, the thing about music, and especially music coming out of the oppressed sections of the society and the world, there's always a message, you know. There's always a message. Margarita, singing there about the Hispanic woman and sexy marriage, singing about the East Indian woman and don't back, the African woman. And the Calypsonians have always been singing about women, and the women today, they just sing back on the men. They sing back on the men. The music always tells a story. Please share the link and let everyone know we're on tonight. Last night we were off because there was blackout here in the area. And so we missed last night. But we're on tonight, so please share the link and let everyone know that we are on. Lots happening. Notice that the APNU and WIN are scheduled to meet as a result of WIN's decision not to include an APNU member on the opposition nominees to the local government commission, that the leader of the opposition chose 2 WIN members and 1 Forward Guyana movement member, and didn't choose an APNU member, and APNU brought the matter into the public domain. And notice that the two groups are going to meet, and or they're scheduled to meet, or there is a proposed meeting supposed to take place on Monday. We shall see. We shall see. We shall see. So new territory, as we have been saying, and so they'll have to work their way. We will have to work our way through the politics. New era in politics too, you know. Brings with it new ways of doing old things. It brings with it reinterpretation of old things and trying to fit them into the new. One thing that we are certain about is change. One thing we are certain about is change. Tomorrow is not going to be Friday. It is going to be Saturday. And the following day is going to be Sunday. So change is inevitable. And as in life, so it is in politics, that we have to take cognizance of change and accommodate change. New interpretations of political action and political work, new interpretations of how change is going to come about. So we have to work with what is before us. And sometimes we come to these moments in our political life that we have to navigate. And sometimes we do things that we would not normally do. And we have to we always take stock of where we are with these matters. If we don't, we find ourselves in deep trouble. Nobody knew one day before the elections of last year that on this day, on that day, 1 year later, we would still be grappling with the consequences of that election. But here we are, still grappling with it in all corners of the political landscape. Because political action sometimes throw up outcomes which we do not bargain for. And then we have to confront it. The genius of a people is their ability to confront these new developments. We're learning that whenever we have new developments, there is collateral damage. There is collateral damage. In the process, we discover new things. In the process, some are put to pasture. This is all part of the political process. Good evening. Welcome to Politics 101 on a Friday night. And we continue to mourn the fact that a lot of wrong things are happening in our country, and our people seem impotent to confront the government of the day. Because if we study political history, it is rare that things get to the extent that they've gotten in Guyana, and there is no coordinated mass response to these things. At every twist and turn, whether it's enslavement, whether it's indentureship, whether it's colonialism, whether it's the post-colonial state under Burnham, the post-colonial state under Jagan, Jagdeo, that our people have always responded to the excesses of the state in relatively short order. And they've always done so in a militant way. So we have developed a political militancy in our country. And we have become accustomed to it, that governments sometimes strike out and go very far, but it is never without the requisite response. We have come to, in our history, we've come to take that as a norm. But the excesses of the present government seem not to have brought into play the kind of militancy that we've seen in the past. And so, we end up sounding the alarm bell. And in the process of sounding the alarm bell, we end up pointing fingers at each other. Leaders pointing fingers at the masses pointing fingers at the leaders, the militants point fingers at the conservatives and vice versa. The old point fingers at the new point fingers at the old. And we engage in this back and forth because we are not able to explain why we have deviated from the norm. And we're going through that in Guyana. I am sure that in some communities that is happening quietly. But in the opposition communities, especially the African Guyanese community, this kind of self-examination is going on in the open. And it's not for the faint-hearted. I know I get very frustrated sometimes at the kind of simplistic manifestation of the politics, and a kind of resistance to a deeper understanding of what's happening. When I came into politics as a boy in the 1970s, politicians and political activists explain the world to you. They explain local reality. They explain national and regional realities. They explain the world. They were all wrapped up together. And one of my frustrations is that less energy is placed these days on explaining the world as political work. That was the highest political work. Because in the process of explaining the world and explaining political reality, you are mobilizing. You are mobilizing people. You are mobilizing people. I think we are struggling today to find that kind of rhythm that is needed for the present. And government, by their very nature, do not help the opposition by making it easy for the opposition to confront them. They make it harder. There's Brother Frederick Douglass who said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did and it never will. And if the opposition is caught napping or they're caught trying to figure things out, the government takes advantage of appropriating more political space. I grew up politically in the era of politics by any means necessary. By any means necessary. That if it's necessary to use a certain political means, you do that. If nonviolence was the necessary form of struggle, you use nonviolence. If a more militant form of struggle was necessitated, you use that. That is what by any means necessary means. And so there was always something happening. C.L.R. James says, there's always something to be done. But I think as we have matured politically, we have compressed, we have decreased our political space for political action. It's not easy to get out in the open, to get out on the streets, as we like to say. You have to take people along. People have to come along. We have to go along together to get there. You don't wake up one morning and say, time for the streets, let's go. We work to get there, and sometimes when we get there, it surprises all of us. All of us. I think what we are struggling with today is how to get our people to get to that place where we all can stop fretting and fighting about who not doing what and who not doing what and so on. You know, the speed with which people are leaving parties or some parties, it challenges the notion that people get into politics for selfless reasons. Now, you have to go back and, first of all, decide what you're working with. Are human beings by their very nature selfish or selfless? Are human beings by their very nature selfish? But if you create the conditions for selflessness, they become selfless. They're those philosophical questions that one has to answer. And sometimes we try to answer questions about human beings without getting to the very nature of human beings. I think it was Hobbes who said, mankind by its very nature, its life is going to be short, nasty, and brutish. And that suggests that Hobbes was of the view that mankind by her very nature is selfish. And so left to herself or himself, the world would be a terrible place, to use the language of the young people here. And so they came up with the notion of the creation of the Levitian, the strong man or strong woman who's going to order things. They came up with all these contract theories where people enter into contract with the Levitian, that the Levitian has the wherewithal and the power to keep things in order. And if he or she, the Levitian, gets out of order, you remove them. All these contract theories and contract theories. So the truth of the matter, if we begin, that mankind is by his or her very nature a good being, but if left to himself, he will destroy himself. Then we arrive at a conclusion of how to move. As I said earlier in this program, that the rate at which people live in the PNC/APNU is not normal. It's not normal. I've perused the modern political culture of the Caribbean, and I've not seen an equal. I've not seen an equal. And so therefore, there ought not to be a simplistic explanation of this exodus of people. It's not large. It's not large. But it is enough to ignite perceptions among people. Why are people, every week you pick up the newspaper, somebody from the PNC, APNU is leaving, and they're going to APNU. They're going to PPP. Since the election, you haven't heard too many mid-level or upper level. I mean, not too many. I don't think I've heard of any APNU people leaving and going to win. And this despite, at the level of the masses, more APNU people went to win than went to PPP. But at the top or the middle, more APNU people are going to PPP than they go to win. How do you explain that? The middle and the middle and the top are going one way. Those who are deciding to leave, the middle and the top are going one way, and the bottom are going the other way or another way. How do you explain those things? I think those of us who have tried to come to conclusion as to this exodus at the election to win, we are trying too hard to explain it definitively. It has to be explained as we go along. Can't explain it definitively. When there are exceptions to the rule, or there is an exception to the rule, it is really very difficult to explain it in real time. And I think some of us have been trying to explain that in real time. Now, it has happened before. UF people have left and went over to PNC, PPP people to PNC, PNC people to WPA, PPP people to WPA, PNC people to AFC, AFC people, and PPP people to AFC. We have had those things along the way. What is new is the magnitude of this one. So it is not the electoral action that is new. It is the magnitude of the electoral action. No third party has ever gotten 109,000 votes, represent, I think, about 22%. Or 22 to 25% of the electorate, or certainly those who voted. That has never happened before. What also has never happened before in our Caribbean is that our political system has not accommodated more than two parties with similar strength for too long. Not in Guyana. Third parties have come along, United Force, WPA, I'm talking about the major ones, AFC, and now we see WIN. But WIN is new, so AFC, WPA, United Force, there have been others. And they haven't been able to maintain a three-way system for too long. They haven't been able to do that. After a couple of cycles, they're gone. UF was gone by the 1968 election, and after that, the UF went its merry way. The WPA really was not electoral. They were more of a radical street party, revolutionary party. And so they lasted a good decade and a half. And then once you came to elections, they were gone. The AFC came in 2006. It made an impression in that year. And then in 2011 and 2015, by 2020, it's gone. So what that is saying is that the political system in Guyana and the Caribbean has not shown a capacity to have three parties. In Dominica, you had the Labour Party, the Freedom Party, Mrs. Charles, Eugenia Charles, and they were the two dominant parties in the 1980s, 70s, 80s, and so on. And then in the 1990s, a new party, the United Workers' Party, arose. And for a time, you had the three parties there for one or two cycles. And then all of a sudden, Eugenia Charles retired from politics. The next thing you know, the two dominant parties are the new UWP, the old Labour Party, and Eugenia Child's party was reduced to one seat or two seats, showing that the system is not able to hold on to more than two parties. Eugenia Child's party, the Freedom Party, is all but non-existent now. In Jamaica, Bruce Golding left the Labour Party, the Jamaica Labour Party of Seaga, formed his own party, a third party. May have gotten a seat in Parliament, I think, or may not have even gotten a seat. But that didn't last too long. Bruce Golding was back in the Labour Party and became Prime Minister under the Labour Party. In Barbados, Sir Richie Haynes took his seat. He and three colleagues, they took their 4 seats and they left the DLP, Democratic Labour Party, Barrow's party. They left and they formed their own party. I think they called it the NDP, the National Democratic Party. And they became a third party in Parliament. Again, that didn't last too long. They went to election and a couple of times and they didn't win seats and they were gone. Barbados back to the BLP and the DLP. In Trinidad, Ramesh Dukaram formed the COP, the Congress of the People. And in one election, they won, I think, up to 23% of the popular vote. Mohammed won 22, COP won 23. But given the Trinidad system of force past the post, they didn't get a seat. But they won 23% of the vote, more than win. And they stayed around for a little while. They went into a coalition with the UNC. They were, in the first place, they were a breakaway party from the UNC. But then after a little while, they're gone. Today, the COP, I don't think they hardly exist in Trinidad. And there are other examples I can give of what happened around the Caribbean. The political system doesn't hold more than 2 parties, electoral parties at the same time. Meaning it doesn't hold 3 parties of relative strength. It doesn't. They're always, there's some places there are 20 parties. But we're talking about parties with electoral strength. So what we have now is one party with 36 seats, one with 16, one with 12, and then we have one party. So the 16, the 12, and the 26 can be considered big parties by our count. Considered big parties. Can the political system, can the political process maintain 3 parties like that? And the answer is no, because in such a situation, you can have 2 outcomes. One party winning, or neither of the 3 parties getting 50%. At the last election, a lot of people gambled that they could hold the PPP down to a minority government. That didn't happen. So invariably, what you find in such a process is that the second and third parties generally clash with each other. They usually clash with each other. In Trinidad and Tobago, under Eric Williams, you always had the PNM, which was very strong. And then you had 2 or 3 other opposition parties. But none of them strong enough on their own to dislodge the PNM. And so what they did in time for the 1986 election is they formed this coalition. What they call the One Love Coalition. And that One Love Coalition defeated the PNM in 1986, 33-3. Amazing. But then the One Love Party didn't work together well, and the PNM was back to power in 91 with Patrick Manning at the helm. So here in Guyana, we are struggling with this three-way allocation of seats and how it will work. And people think it would have been an automatic thing. The elections are over. Win got 16 seats. The APNU got 12 seats. The news is not the number of seats which they have, because 12 and 16 in electoral terms, they're almost what you call cush. Twelve and 16 is 28, half of 28 is 14. Win got 16, so it got 2 over the average. APNU get 12, 2 below the average. They're about the same strength. One got 77,000 votes, the other one got 111 what? So it's 24 and 11, 35,000 votes. That's not a big spread. So they're about equal strength electorally. But the system allows the one with more seats, in this case, Win, to call the shots on the opposition side. So the winner-take-all system is not just winner-take-all for the winner, but on the opposition side, the opposition party with the most seats takes all the perks and privileges. So there we are with Win and APNU. Win gets to choose because Win wins the opposition leader position and gets to choose, gets to decide who represents the general opposition. We can argue and say it's not the best system, but it is the system. And Win is utilizing the strengths or the privileges, that come with that system. And why not? Why not? Parties are competing against each other. That's the first line of business. Whether you're opposition parties or not, parties are competing against each other. That's their first line of business. And if you are Win and you get the position of opposition leader, which gives you the edge over your competitors on the opposition side, why not use it? There's nothing in the law that prevents you from using it. There's nothing in the law that prevents Win from taking all 3 seats on the local government commission, from taking all the seats in the Public Service Commission. There's nothing stopping Win from doing that. Win is not violating the law. We have to get that straight. The reason we are not getting it straight is because our voters did not take all of that into consideration when they went out to vote. They went out to vote and they cast their votes, and they created a 3-way operation, and with no disrespect to the FGM. The FGM has 1 seat, but with the FGM 1 seat, they don't make a difference with anything. You can have 1 seat and make a difference. It happened in the Caribbean before. In St. Vincent in 1972, the 2 big parties were Kush and San Michel, had 1 seat from the Grenadines. And he was able to become prime minister with 1 seat. So I'm not dissing 1 seat. All I'm saying, in this instance, the 1 seat doesn't make a difference. So if I don't mention FGM, it's not to disrespect them. So Win has the authority, some will argue the power, by virtue of the rules of the system. The rules of the system. 1 second. All right, we're back here. So as a result of the system, Win gets to call the shots on the opposition side because it holds the position as opposition leader. So nobody should be quarreling with Win at that level. In the final analysis, those who voted for Win, those who voted for APNU, those who voted for FGM, they voted for 1 thing in common. And that was to replace the PPP. That is why, after they finish voting and they vote 2-way, they expect their leaders to come together. Because those who are arguing about, remember I said earlier that we are trying to make sense of how African Guyanese and Amerindians voted at the last election. And we now know what they voted for. We can argue about what they voted against. They may have voted against APNU lack of militancy. They may have voted against Norton because they say too black. They may have voted against the APNU for so. But one thing that united them, the Win voters and APNU, they voted, they didn't want the PPP, they don't like the PPP, they voted against the PPP. And so, in their political heads, after the election, they expect Win and APNU to hug up and think, God, geez, man, if we know that, why are you all at the top can't know that? Because remember, They were banking on a Nigel Hughes and Aubrey Norton coalition. It didn't happen. And so some of them may have voted for Win out of frustration with that. So once the voting was finished, they expect Win and APNU to come together. Although Mr. Mohammed said very clearly he was not going to collate with either PPP or PNC. He was very clear. But you know, in the political season, people hear what they want to hear and see what they want to see. And they may have brushed that aside. So now the elections are over. And what you have is a clash between what the people wanted, and that is they wanted an anti-PPP story. And they split up the thing in two, but what they wanted is an anti-PPP story. But the leaders at the top, Mr. Mohammed, said very clearly, he's not for that. And once he said he's not for that, APNU will look stupid if they go running and say, we for that. Then what is going to happen is that Win may say, I changed my mind. I want to collate, but collate on my terms. And I think we see some of that. We see Win saying, we reserve the right to take all. But in instances where we don't take all, if we collate on our terms. And once that is set up, it's very difficult to get any genuine collective action. The genuine collective action could also be pushed by circumstances facing us. Let me go back in history. There's a lot of bad blood between the PPP and the WP, a lot of bad blood. After all, people like Kwayana and Moses Bagwan and so on had come out of the PPP at various times, and I'm sure they would have carried strong anti-PPP sentiments, and PPP would have had some suspicions about them, or more than suspicions. In 1974, when Rodney came back to Guyana, was banned from UG, from teaching at UG, and ASCREA called street protests. It was the first time Kwayana and Jagan were speaking on the same platform since 1956. So almost 18 years had passed, and the two of them had not spoken on the same platform. They were, in some senses, political enemies. And I tell that story to say there was bad blood between the PPP and the WPA. But as the government, as the crisis between government and opposition increased, the two of them were forced to work together. So sometimes it is the actions of the government that drive opposition to work together. Reluctant opposition. And I think one of the arguments that's been made today is that this government is doing its due. It's overdoing the due. And yet the opposition can't come together. So again, there's a bucking of history here. The fact that the government is overdoing its due should have already forced WIN and APNU to come together. But it hasn't. So again, we are seeing an anomaly in history. Never happened. By this time, the PPP and WPA had come together. WPA comes into being in 1974. By 1977, 76, 75, 76, they're reaching out to each other. Brindley Ben left the WPA because it felt WPA was getting too cozy with the PPP. Brindley himself would later go back into the PPP. But that's for another day. So by this time, the PPP and the WPA were working together. In similar circumstances, WIN and APNU are not working together. So what it shows is that you can have similar circumstances. You can have the same circumstances, but not the same outcome. Everything objectively points to a WIN APNU working arrangement. But the dynamics that drove us here work against those dynamics. You see, the WPA came on the scene in 74, but it didn't take seats from PPP. It took some supporters. The PPP had made it clear to the WPA, do not go into Indian areas and organize in Black people area. We got Indian area covered. So the PPP was keeping WPA out of Indian areas, not by some sleight of hand. They said it very clearly to the WPA. The WPA people, Takuma Ogunsi and them, they were wrong. They said it clearly to the WPA, do not come into Indian areas. So when you see WIN now trying to consolidate what it had, nothing new. Parties have always consolidated what they had. They've always protected what they have. WPA didn't tell Jagan not to go into African areas. In fact, they carried Jagan into the African areas. And one may examine that as we go along. Because Jagan was protecting his base, while the WPA's temporary base, which was really a base that was brought to the WPA through Askria. WPA was opening that base to Jagan, while Jagan was telling WPA, don't come in me base. WPA eventually went into the Indian areas through invitation by dissident PPP people. So we are seeing the similarities in histories. We are seeing the differences. How do we move on? I think this meeting that is coming up between WIN and the APNU, is going to be a critical meeting. Because they're not only going to discuss, so far as I see in the media, they're not only going to be discussing the recent action by WIN where it excluded the APNU from the local government commission. They said they're going to discuss other matters, other thorny issues. And there are lots of other issues they have to discuss. So this meeting on Monday is going to be very crucial. It will determine whether they continue along the path that they're going, whether they find some middle ground, or whether they hug up. Those are the three options on the table. They hug up and say we're going to work together to remove PPP. They continue along the lines of where they are now, or they meet halfway. I don't know what halfway looks like. I haven't thought it through myself. But there's always a halfway stage. The next question is, why is opposition, I'm not saying unity, because unity, people could misunderstand unity to mean some hug up kumbaya and so on. Why is it that you need the two opposition parties, major opposition parties and other parties, to have some common platform? Well, in a winner-take-all system, you are dealing with a government that is a runaway train. It's a government that has maneuvered its way into a dominant position, 36 seats in the National Assembly. But more importantly, a stubborn government. Hamilton Green recently wrote a letter to the newspapers. We carried it on our website, and it's trending. It's been trending for the last 3 days. It's not that the PPP, has a lot of seats and controls the government. The PPP is stubborn. It's not giving an inch. It's not giving an inch. Burnham, during the time of PPP, WPA opposition, Burnham would play this little game with them. He will tell Jagan, look, the WPA is the worst possible alternative. And then he would say to the WPA, look, all you're getting used by the Indians. Burnham was not 3 cents chap. But he will cut some slack, to the PPP. Didn't cut much any slack to the WPA. But he cut some slack to the PPP. He agreed to the recognition of Gawu. The PPP has had a couple seats. But this government, this present government, is stubborn. It's not giving 1 inch to the opposition. 1 inch. So it's taking advantage of opposition, lack of opposition solidarity, but it's also seeking to widen the gap between PPP and APNU and Mohammed. It is using the extradition thing against Mohammed. And so the situation is not as straightforward. The PPP knows that although APNU and WIN and FGM don't have the numbers, they have 29. And you're moving away from a situation where the opposition had 31 to 34 for the PPP. Some may say 33 to 32. That was the result after 2015, result after 2020. And so you're moving out to 36 to 29. That's big, considering our situation. It's big. And so the PPP doesn't want the two of them to come together. The PPP is taking every advantage because they're sensible enough to know that, look, this majority that we have here could go up in smoke tomorrow. There could be mass protests and the government could be forced to the table. They could either be forced out of office or they could be forced to the table as they were in 1998 under the Hart-Munston Accord. So the PPP is not foolish. They're not giving anything to the opposition. They're trying to keep them apart. They're rolling out a PNC/APNU dissident crossover every week, every other week, weakening the APNU in the eyes of its own supporters or its natural constituency. It is holding the legal thing over Mohammed's head, creating doubts as to whether Mohammed is fighting for himself or he's fighting for his supporters. So the PPP is exploiting the situation. And so this proposed meeting next week is going to be very crucial in telling us where the opposition goes, how the opposition is going to operate. As we go forward. Politics is not, as I said, generally politics is not a linear thing, a straight line. But our politics in Guyana have been very much so, not a straight line. And the politics today is even worse than it was yesterday. So very delicate. And part of our frustration is that people are offering simplistic answers to these problems. I have to make clear that we in the WPA, we think we are far past the stage of band-aids. You try to, put a band-aid here, put a band-aid there. We are saying the whole thing has to be overturned. The system has to be overturned, which means that constitutional reform or constitutional change has to be very much part of the agenda. And to solve our problem within the framework that we have is not going to lead to any solution. The PPP has captured the system. It has captured the legal system. It has captured the electoral system. It has total control of the legislative system. And of course, it controls the executive, and it has fused the executive with elements within the economic elites. So the PPP has almost total control of the situation. And to try to solve the problem within that framework, in the end, it will frustrate you. And so that our view is that you have to walk on multiple feet. The electoral system by itself is not going to solve our country's problems. If we go to extra militant approach, we run the risk of igniting ethnic violence and so forth. And we've seen from what happened in 1964, those things don't heal overnight. But that should not deter us from using militant politics when it becomes necessary. So our argument is that you do not take anything off the table. And the more options you have on the table, the more likely you are going to have a sensible solution. So people would like to box us in peaceful and violence. And I don't use that term of peaceful protest. I think protest is protest. And I don't think protest and peace go hand in hand. Peter Tosh said, you know, everyone is crying out for peace, but nobody's crying out for justice. So if we make peace the end, you will get peace, but you may not get justice. And so the end has to be justice. Protest has to lead to justice. Whether that protest is peaceful or not peaceful is determined by a lot of factors. Very important, it's determined by the government reaction to the protest. But the minute you put peaceful next to protest, you already signal to the opposition, to the government, you're joking. Because you're more concerned about how you look than about what you ought to be doing. And when you have a plural opposition, as we have, at least 3 parties, but the APNU is not a party, it's a party of parties. But one political force wins the second political force, FGM, the third political force, and then you have parties like AFC and Liberty and so on outside. They're also political forces. When you have plural political forces, you're likely to get plural or several views on what is to be done. So perhaps for WIN and APNU, maybe they should try to isolate areas of agreement if they are. I'm not sure that they are, but you try to isolate areas of agreement. And you try to frustrate the areas of disagreement. We are sure that there are areas of disagreement. we're not sure whether there are areas of agreement. But they will have to strive, I think, if they're going to go anywhere with these things, is that they have to carve out areas of agreement on important issues. Like I said, WIN and APNU is not a case where WIN got 20 seats and APNU get 6. 16 and 12 in electoral terms, they are almost even. A mere 30,000 votes separate them. So they're not a big gap. And so that has to be taken into consideration when they're talking about joint action. We shall see where they go. Somebody pointed out to me the other day that yesterday or sometime they sent something to me with Dagi, cussing out Mohammed and so forth, as evidence that things are beginning to fall apart in the WIN. I don't know if that is necessarily true. But what it clearly shows is like in most parties, but especially with WIN, some of its supports is really soft support. It was more about personal loyalty to Mohammed than actual hard support. And that happens to a lot of new parties. So I'm not surprised that Dagi would be cussing out the WIN and so on. It also points to the motivation. Was the motivation really political or was it otherwise? That's WIN's business for them to work out. But those who are seeing WIN as a very important actor going forward have to take into consideration the manner in which WIN came into being. And I go back to Clive Thomas's exhortation to us when we first talked about vote buying. And that is that once people begin to sell their votes, it's going to be difficult to stop it. And so when we are talking about political parties, especially the newer ones in this environment, we cannot talk about them outside of the culture of vote buying. I hear with my own ears some young black people, especially the males, who are saying, the man get plenty money, the man's the right man for Guyana. Because money gonna run under the man. Because the man ain't gonna thief. And so that is a new consideration that one has to take into consideration. A new consideration that one has to take into consideration. All right, we can live with that. So we shall wait and see what happens in the next couple of days on the opposition side. One has to give Mohammed some credit for at least saying, all right, I hear you all, APNU, and I'm willing to put back this local government thing on the table. But I want other things to be put on the table. You have to commend him for that. We shall see where it goes. You have to commend Norton also for deciding to fight. Many people after WIN would have submitted the names. Some political party, some political leader would have said, well, what are we going to do? That you done already. But Norton pushed back. And as a result of the pushback, I think he caught Mohammed's attention. And at least they're prepared to sit at the table. We shall see where this all goes. Well, enjoy the weekend. And we'll be back here on Monday, bright and early.